Good to see you. Haven't seen you in a minute, but it's good to see you.
Yeah, it's a strange world where you see people infrequently and only on video.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe that's the new automation and emerging technology. We no longer meet in persons. We just do it through video.
I'm not sure that's lasting.
Yeah. So the way this works is a 30-minute recorded call. I start by asking you two questions. Tell us your name and tell us anything you want to share with us to help us get to know you a little bit better.
Okay.
Once the recording is over and is converted, I send you a link to it. Look at it. If you approve, we upload it. If not, we do over or delete it. Okay?
Sure.
There you go.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Oh, shall I tell you a little about myself?
Tell us your name first, and then tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Cohen Vogel. I live in Carborough, Chapel Hill, and I've been in this area about almost 9 years now. We moved here from Tallahassee, Florida. My wife and I have had kind of a roundabout route from the Northeast to the West Coast to the South, and settled here with two boys, and now have one child going to ninth grade and one going to second year in college.
Wow.
I've likewise had a little bit of a meandering route in my career, I guess. I've been started in Middle East studies as an undergraduate and agricultural economics as a graduate student, and ended up working in legislative research offices in a couple states, and then ultimately for public university systems. And most recently, I headed up a data and analytics team at the University of North Carolina system office, and left there last year to pursue my other pursuits. And I'm now doing consulting, working for myself, a firm called DataWorks Partners, and really enjoying that, and hoping that despite the current economic environment that I'll be able to grow that and stick with it.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. And so how old did you say your kids were?
One just turned 20 and one is 14.
14. So I'm going to ask you this question in light of Mr. Floyd. Have you ever felt fear or unsafeness or something for your children as they meander through the world, go to school and all those kinds of things?
There are times when I think probably at the same level of, I guess, the level of a parent worrying about your child being out in the world on their own for the first time or in new places. My older one went off to Canada for his first year of college, and now because of some mostly COVID related challenges, he's transferred back to North Carolina. Mm-hmm. But so, having your child away across the world creates some fear, anxiety. It's not in the way that I've really only, probably recently really begin to become aware of the depth of fear that some of my friends have, African-American friends have about their kids, even in neighborhoods like ours that we feel are safe, mixed, that, had conversations where there's sort of aha moments, like I feel like I'm just learning, like just coming out of a little ignorant bubble as a parent, and not realizing that some other parents are experiencing much more.
Can I ask you why that is? I mean, I'm assuming you were born here. You know what America has been, and I mean, we're a capitalistic society. Why is it just now you're recognizing that Black and brown people have struggled in America, when I'm sure somewhere in your history class they told you what happened to the Native Americans, told you a little bit about slavery, they told you about what they did to Japanese, Chinese, and Mexicans. I mean, so why just now?
I guess I wouldn't say it's just now. I guess it is like a lot of ways we experience the world. It's sometimes like peeling back an onion, and I've been aware of bigotry and of racism in a variety of ways since I was a kid. I grew up in East Tennessee, which is predominantly white Protestant it's a fairly homogenous area, particularly when I grew up there. It's
Mhm.
becoming more diverse now. Um, and I grew up in a small Jewish community in Knoxville, which was predominantly not Jewish. And so I experienced things myself
Mhm.
that, an awareness that I was different in some way, that people recognized it. I experienced racism through other, through others, um, secondhand, I guess.
Mhm.
That, I was still in a largely segregated school system where there was busing. We heard people saying things growing up. I was aware it was wrong and, offensive at an early age. It's not like we didn't experience it, but I think that's different. And that's probably true for a lot of, what you might group sort of white progressive people of our age or maybe younger. That it's one thing to experience that sort of vicariously through other people. I guess it's another thing to really start to internalize what people are feeling on a daily basis when they're feeling for their children, for themselves. When I hear, I was thinking, like, most recently, it was a couple weeks before George Floyd was murdered, that one of my son's friends split off from the group riding home on their bikes one night. And my son came home and said, we couldn't find him anywhere. I don't know where he went. Can you call his mom and see if if he came home, because we don't know if he fell down. Or called his mom. Yes, he was home. He made it home a few minutes earlier. He just took a different route, split off and left.
Yes.
And she on the phone just lit into him. I mean, yelling at him, angry, apologized to me, hung up the phone, and called me back the next day and said, I have to explain that. I had a conversation with my son that, he's 14. I haven't had with him really before. And it's terrible conversation I didn't want to have. But, despite that we're in a fairly diverse community, despite that he has, friends and he knows people and he feels comfortable, he's a young black man. He's got dreadlocks. He's got dark skin. He is going to be a target regardless of what he does. And I told him, you do not split off from your friends. You don't, especially stay with your white friends. It's safer for you that way. And to hear that, I mean, I was like in tears on the phone. Here's this kid. He's at our house. He's just a friend in the neighborhood. And to have his mother say, I have to tell him how scared I am for him and how unsafe he is, was heartbreaking. And so, that's not something that I've ever heard before. That's not something that I'd ever really thought about at that level. And then to hear that, and then to go through watching the country sort of respond to George Floyd and everything that's happened before it, everybody else who's been a victim before that. I think that for me was the beginning of waking up, maybe in a different way than I would have, even if I'd been aware and read, read White Fragility or read books or read, Ta-Nehisi Coates or anything else. It's not the same as experiencing that kind of feeling firsthand.
Well,
I
I
was
can't. Go
pretty
ahead.
long-winded.
Yeah. I, I can't tell you how that statement you just said about he needs to stick with his white friends to be safe, how much that hurts me as a parent. I have two children. My daughter's 41. She's an interior designer, and my son is a rising senior in college. And the minute either one of them leave home, I start praying. The moment they leave till they arrive at whatever destination they're going to. And then when they tell me they're coming home, I start praying until they arrive home in the driveway. And I had never thought to tell my children, well, if you want to live, you need to stay with your white friends. That I don't even know how to process that statement because that's just so hard. Because and I'm speaking for my generation because I'm a generation older than you. Um, I learned a long time ago you could not trust white people. Do not trust white people. They may smile at you, they may say nice things to you, they may tell you how many black friends or brown friends they have, but they're out for themselves and only themselves. And for me to even have thought to tell my child, and my son is a gamer, he's nationally recognized and all that, but I never thought to say those words to him. In order to stay alive, you got to be with someone that's white. That's a frightening, frightening, frightening thought.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't know. It struck me. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I told my son, he broke down crying. It was, it, and everyone would express that differently, but it's the feelings and the fear that drives that kind of statement is hard to understand.
And I would tell you this, for our poor, extremely living below the poverty line, there are no white friends. There are no white people in their communities. There are no white friends. So what your statement just said is that Black lives could just disappear like that, but if they don't have white friends. And I'm sure that's not what you intended, but that's what it sounds like. Like the only way you're going to survive is if you hang around with white people. And I have a very, very diverse group of friends and colleagues and coworkers and such. Um, I never felt safe with them, not one day, not even with my boss or anything else, because I never know what's going to happen to me. What are they going to do to me or blame me for something? So for me to sit down with my two children now, instead of having the conversation about how to behave if you encounter law enforcement or white supremacists, now I've got to sit down and have a conversation with my children and tell them in order to stay alive, you got to have a white friend.
Yeah,
That's hard. That's hard.
I, I agree. I don't know how to respond to it exactly. I didn't know how to respond to her. I mean, it was, all I could say was like, you know, it breaks my heart that you have to say that to me. I don't even know, you know, I, I, I just, it's just too hard for me to hear that, you know, this child who we consider, you know, one of the kids who plays over at the house, one of the friends in the neighborhood has to feel like, while all the other guys shoot off behind someone's backyard on their way home, he's got to make sure he stays with people, and he doesn't do that. And yeah. Anyway, I don't have to tell you. But.
Yeah. One of the things I'll say about this conversation, this is not aimed at you, but about most people, you live in a cloud called white privilege, in which you don't really see outside of that cloud. Every once in a while, you might see a glimpse like Mr. Floyd's death or Ahmaud Arbery's death or something like that. But those are just blimps, that happen in your world, where we live with those every day. When the first slave people captured people, made slaves, came into America in 1619, since that day to this very day, we've had a boot on our neck. And one of the things I was going to ask you was how we met, because I want to show you a parody of what white privilege means. So can you share with us how you and I met?
How we met? I think I came across, maybe whether it's through LinkedIn or some sort of social media, I came across your site that referred to kind of a network of, I think, minority stem of the triangle, or an organization that you had a listserv, and I was looking for channels for recruiting, really channels for recruiting a more diverse pool of applicants for my office, and so I think I just emailed you. We got together a couple times.
And that's exactly correct. That's exactly how we met. Now I'm going to take you a little bit further down that. I stayed in touch with you, LinkedIn, whatever. And when you were deciding to leave the UNC system, I stayed in touch with you. Whatever you asked me to do, if you had a posting, I posted it to my network. After you left, I added you to a group I created in Duke, which is just technology people, that we meet once a month for lunch and whatever it is. No one does that for me. No one, checks to see how I am, connects me to people that might be beneficial for me to know, help me understand how to get from point A to point B. And because there's an assumption made, either it doesn't matter that I can't get from point A to point B, or not worth your time to help me get from point A to point B. And again, as I said, I'm not aiming at this at you. I'm just saying that's what white privilege looks like for us, that we are willing to help. I heard a guy say yesterday on the radio that black people are racist. And I thought about that for a long time. And I thought to myself, how could we ever be racist? We barely know who we are. We got here. You can trace your ancestry back probably thousands of years. I can trace mine back to my great grandmother, my great grandfather, and that's it. So racist how? We could be angry. I think that's a correct statement. I think we could be frustrated. I think that's a correct statement. I think we could be outraged seeing Mr. Floyd die. I think that's a correct statement. But racist? No. Because if you remember the Rodney King event, Reginald Denny was riding his tractor trailer and they were throwing and beating him up and doing all this stuff. It was a black man that saved his life. And he was outraged at what had happened to Mr. King, and yet no one people seem to be shocked that we are where we are right now. We've been knowing this for years. And in the last month or two, they had two black men hanging from a tree. And I can tell you, I can almost 100% guarantee you this. There's no black person in America that would hang themselves from a noose. None. Because we know the history of that pain. So, well, it was suicide. If it was suicide, well, if we took an overdose of pills or we shot ourselves, stabbed ourselves, something like that, I can say, yeah, I can see that. But a noose, no, 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 not a noose. Because that lynching is so entrenched in us that how little our lives meant was to castrate a black man, hang him up from a tree by a rope, and let him bleed to death or choke to death or whatever it is, like Mr. Floyd did, but just a different kind of lynching. So I would ask that you and your colleagues and people in your neighborhood, regardless of their race or gender, whatever it is, think about what you can do to help change the narrative. Change the narrative because, this is not new for us. We're not shocked by this. We're outraged that it's continuing to happen, but we're not shocked by this. We're not reading any books to find we live it every day, so when we turn on the news and they tell you about the black man that robbed somebody at the ATM, or they tell you about the Hispanic man who's drunk driving or whatever, polarizing us. Like, is this that no white man has ever robbed the ATM? No white man has ever drunk drive. All of these things kind of like really highlight how much society tries to make black and brown people look so terrible. And my last comment, I'll say, welfare. So, I hate entitlement programs. I'm just never been a fan of entitlement programs because they take so much of my taxes now, I can barely breathe. But the way they tell the story, the majority of people on welfare are black and brown. And if you think about that, between the black and brown, we make up about 30% of the entire population. How can the majority of us be welfare recipients? We're just poor. We're economically challenged every single way. If you and I were to apply for the same job, you get paid more, may have less education, less experience, but you get paid more. If you went to do a consulting job for someone, they're more likely to trust your knowledge and your expertise than mine because I'm black. I don't know anything. I'm dumb. I don't have any intellect whatsoever. And so it's a challenge. It is really a challenge to be black. So what I hope from the white community, and in addition to joining us in protest and marching and all those things, is that you work to change the narrative, that your children grow up without bias. And I realize that's a hard thing to do because we all have biases. But, grow up and see any color person from orange all the way to the other side of the spectrum as a person, as a human being, And to me, if we can get that done, maybe they'll stop killing black people the way that they do. Maybe they'll stop incarcerating black and brown people the way that they do. Maybe, just maybe, this will change. But I am not hopeful because Selma did the same thing. Black and white people marching, dogs, water hose, and all that stuff. We got the civil rights movement out of that, but it took years before we got to, I would say, integration, but it was never equal. Still's not equal today. Majority of the people that are in charge are white and male. And you take a bunch of black kids and you put them in a PWI or put them in a system where the person doesn't have an idea what that child's going through. You don't know if that child's eating at night. You don't know if that child's parents are there. And you make some assumptions about them that's not there. So my hope for you as my friend is that you will work to change the narrative, and you will reach out to your black and brown and white and green and pink and all the other color friends and engage in conversations and try to make change. If you are doing consulting work and you need a person who's cybersecurity, consider who's out there. Don't just automatically assume, hey, my cousin Joe, he's a cyber expert. Just give everybody a chance, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And I think that's, I mean, I can look back on history, and it can be disheartening to see how many other times people have marched. I mean, I remember I was briefly a student at San Francisco State when, the streets were shut down in the wake of Rodney King's beating. And, it seemed like, wow, people are really moved. People are, this isn't some small thing. And I look at now and I say, wow, I've never seen such sustained expression of frustration and anger and hope and everything else that you see right now. And that may be because I haven't had my eyes open, and maybe because I was too young at some point and too caught up in other things at another point. But it creates some hope that we will, as a society, we'll take this opportunity as a window to do more than just give lip service to what needs to happen. But I can look at it now. I think what it has done, and maybe this is because of my children more than anything else, that they are in many ways more aware of their world than certainly than I was at that age. And maybe, they're making me more aware now, but expressing that there's a big difference between being not a racist, whatever that means. Because I think that we've had a lot of interesting family conversations, especially my parents and others on Zoom, about what that means. But to be actively anti-racist is a very different thing than just to say, I love all people because I don't care what their skin color is, or I don't care what their religion is, or anything. Great, but there's a lot more to it. And like you said, it means, as a hiring manager, it means doing more than just sending emails out through a network and hoping that the pool of applicants is diverse. As a contractor or subcontractor, it means making more of an effort than perhaps I would have otherwise made. And so I have talked to my son recently and had to say, as much as this moves me, and as much as I feel like I'm learning at a 50-something, I'm learning more about the world now than, I feel like why couldn't I have understood this 30 years ago? And here you are 30 years ago, at least, you have the opportunity to do so much in the next 30, 40, 50 years. So, take that opportunity. But I have to sort of say, mea culpa, because I wasn't like this. The world changed suddenly this year, and I remember conversations in high school and in college and afterwards that should have opened my eyes more than it did, or opportunities to engage with my world and with my community differently. And so, I've still got a few years left to do that, but I appreciate the sentiment, because I agree. It takes more than just sort of recognizing it.
I have just one more question to ask, and I'm going to leave the rest of the time to you, which is about 4 minutes, to say whatever you want to say. But I just want to ask you, have you ever felt fear if you saw police lights in your rearview mirror pulling you over?
Yeah, but more fear about, like,
the ticket. And
am I in trouble? Yeah, like not fear for my life.
Not fear for my life.
And that, that's something that, to experience that from the people who are supposed to be there protecting you is I don't know how that, I'm sure that would just be incredibly traumatic. I don't know how you'd carry that with you forever.
Forever. Absolutely. So you have 3 minutes and 59 seconds, all yours.
Well, I want to thank you for for asking me to be part of this conversation. I've watched a few of your other interviews, and I think it's a great idea. Just I have nothing special in terms of my experience, my background to add to the conversation. In many ways, like I have experienced a level of privilege that many people don't, and it's taken me 50 years to start kind of waking up to that privilege. So in many ways, I have a lot less to contribute to the conversation than probably a lot of people do. But I appreciate both in this conversation and in our past interactions, you have been very welcoming and inclusive of me in your group at Duke. Opportunity to connect with people who are in the same field, who have a lot of different kinds of backgrounds, who want to talk about whether it's IT or talk about diversity in the workplace, or and that for me has been a really rewarding experience. So I want to thank you for that.
You're quite welcome. We are glad you're there.
And I hope it doesn't necessarily have to be on YouTube, but I hope that this will be the continuing, that this is just one of continuing conversations, because I want to learn from colleagues, from people who have tremendous experience professionally and personally and everything. And so watching you do these interviews, I think you bring a level of, I don't know what the word is, realness. There's no cold punches, and there's no avoiding tough topics. And if we're going to get past the just multitude of challenges we have, I think being able to talk candidly and release those vulnerabilities and just say, this is what it is. Let's throw it out there and talk about it, I think is crucial. So thank you.
You're quite welcome. But I think uncomfortable conversations is the first step. So although
Yes.
it may not have been the best conversation, you may not have wanted to go in the direction it did, but it takes this conversation because someone is going to listen to this and hear something that may resonate with them. And I think it's clear from both of us that we care about each other and we want each other to succeed. So this is not meant to be adversarial or onerous or any of that. It's just to, highlight certain issues that exist, and it exists not at you're not the police officer with your knee on the neck. What you are is you're a part of a community that has privilege that the Black and brown people do not have. Like you said about the police officer, I was adopted. My adopted mother only had a 4th grade education, and my stepfather or adopted stepfather, whatever it is, he never went to school. And when she died, and I think I might have told you this story, maybe I haven't. When she died, she left me a little bag of sterling silver coins, may have amounted to about $3. It made me a coin collector. And so I collect coins. Every time somebody tells me they're leaving the United States, I tell them, bring me back some money from wherever you're going. And I've been doing this now. My she died on December 2nd, 1977, and I've been doing this ever since. So I've collected, a good amount of diverse kinds of funds, but I'm still relatively poor. There are still times where I live paycheck to paycheck. There are still times I'm wondering what kind of legacy will I leave to my children, because not one of my relatives have left me anything ever other than that little small bag of money, which gave me a hobby. But there's not. So I ask you, Dan, and I ask everyone and you talk about this. Talk about the economics of racism. Talk about what is racism and what is the difference between bias, prejudice, and racism. And people make very, very clear distinctions between those three things. And I understand that makes sense, but if we are clear that they are 3 separate, distinct things, then we need to be able to address each one and eradicate it.
Yeah. So one of the I think one of the ideas, and we had this conversation, my siblings and I had this conversation with my parents recently. One of the ideas that I think was expressed. There's a book, White Fragility, that I think is a good book for white people to read. And it expressed this idea that we need to get over this perception, this attitude that the term racism, is labeling, is this some kind of evil, it's not people in white hoods running around, on horses and cross burnings and all the evil. I mean, that's an extreme expression, but we need to think about racism as, if I am benefiting from a racist society, a racist structure, or racist institutions, if I'm not actively trying to do something about that, then I'm, that's being part of racism. And so rather than seeing it as an evil label, to start seeing it as a state that we, that doesn't have to be, at least it helps people to get past that like initial tough conversation and be like, okay, let's forget about that. Just quit being defensive and let's like move on to the meaningful substantive stuff. And
Yeah.
I thought that was a really good point in that book. And I remember my parents were struggling with it in particular. It was, one of my siblings said, "I'm a racist," not me. I mean, she was talking about herself. She said,
Okay.
And her father's, no, don't say that. You're not a racist. It's okay, Dad. Like, we can get past that. And so anyway,
I think everybody should take a moment and think about slavery. It was an economic injustice. They didn't bring slaves over here because they wanted to darken up or bring more brown people into America. They brought slaves here for economic reasons. And that economic reason has not changed to this day. And Jim Crow did a very good job of making us separate. We don't like our brown brothers. Our brown brothers don't like us. And so what white America has done very well is separate people and make them think things about themselves that may not even be true. So continue to have those conversations. And as soon as this video converts, I will send you a link. And you can say whether you want to upload it or not. Right now, no one sees it but you and I. So no one wants to see you say it's okay. Thank you so much, Dan. Stay safe.
Thank you.
And I hope your business continues to grow. Good luck with that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.